Hey, what is up, people? It's Will here. Going to break down two UFC cards this weekend, one from Stockholm, the other from Canada, coming off a bumper weekend from UFC 178, where there was just great fights from top to bottom. The main card I thought was phenomenal, kicked off by Cat Zingano finishing Amanda Nunes after having a very tough first round. The fight between Romero and Kennedy was up and down. A little bit of controversy there regarding Romero getting off the stool. Conor McGregor, as I said, would make it look very easy, and he did. Cerrone pushing himself even closer to a title shot, and Demetrius Johnson being as dominant as we thought he would be, but a fantastic card, with the highlight obviously being Conor McGregor, who just goes from strength to strength in the UFC. Two fight cards this weekend. I like them both. A lot of good fights on both. A lot of people shit on these fight night cards. I'm not one of them. I love seeing the local fighters, and there's some fighters on here I'm really looking to see. I'm looking to see if the SBG guys can continue their winning ways. Sweden has got a great main event between Gunnar Nelson and Rick Story, and in Canada we have Rory MacDonald against the former Strikeforce champion Tarec Saffiedine. So I'm going to get straight into the card here in Sweden. In the featherweight division, we've got Zubaira Tukhugov against Ernest Chavez. Chavez is coming off I think he beat Sedano away back at UFC 170 back in February, and I know he lost before that. Elias Silverio, he lost to him in Brazil. He just got completely outworked and outgrappled by Silverio, who's a very good fighter. He's good off the ground, and he made Chavez look fairly bad, to be honest with you. I think it's his first fight dropping down to the featherweight division. Tukhugov's coming off a win over Douglas De Andrade Silva. A guy who just lays on you. He's one of these guys, the Sambo guys, who are just very hard to take down. His striking's very limited, but once he gets you in the clinch, that's where his real work starts. He gets you to the ground, he lays on you, beats you with a little bit of ground and pound, but gets lots of decisions. So I'm going to go Tukhugov by decision. The welterweight division, we've got Mirbek Taisimov against Marcin Bandel. Taisimov fights out Tiger Muay Thai under Roger Huerta. Coming off a loss, I believe, to, let me think, Michel Pesares, I think it was, back in Brazil as well. Didn't look great in that fight. I just don't think he kind of adjusted to the kind of fight scene in Brazil. He seemed to struggle. Roger Huerta said he struggled all week in the run up to that fight. Didn't look himself at all, and ultimately lost the fight. He's against Marcin Bandel, who's dropping down from the welterweight division to fight Taisimov here. 13-2 record with 12 of his wins coming submission. The fights that I've seen are a little bit limited. The guys he was facing had pretty bad records as well. I like Taisimov here. I think he can knock him out late. So I'm going to go Taisimov by knockout in the third round. Next up, we've got Tor Troying against Krzysztof Jotko. Tor Troying, gentleman, met him in Dublin. Ultimately, I thought he would win that fight against Trevor Smith, as Trevor Smith gasses fairly badly, but to my surprise, Tor Troying did the exact same. He gassed really, really badly, and did not look good in that fight whatsoever, and lost via decision. And he's trying to get back on track here against a guy who's very, very dangerous in Krzysztof Jotko, who's coming off his first loss of his career back at UFC Berlin at the end of May there. So where he lost to Magnus Sillenblad, who's fighting later on in this fight. So yeah, I think it's going to be a close fight. I think Tor Troying can't get any look as bad as he did back in Dublin. So I'm expecting him to really step up here in his home country and hopefully get the win. Ultimately, I'm going to go Krzysztof Jotko. I think he's just got that little bit more. He's a little bit better all round than what Tor Troying is. Pops his jab quite well. Gets you the ground, and he can hurt you down there as well. So I'm going to go Jotko by a split decision. Next up, we've got Kahal Pendred against Ghassan Umalatov. Umalatov is coming off a very good win over Paulo Thiago. You can't really say much because Paulo Thiago has been going downhill for years, and he looks absolutely hideous. How he's still in the UFC? I think he's still in the UFC anyway. It's beyond me because he looks horrific at the minute. Before that, he lost to Neil Magny, a guy his striking got a lot better for the Thiago fight. I don't know if that's because Thiago kind of rushed in quite a lot and he didn't really, he kind of caught him in the counter. But he's a good grappler as well, likes to get to the ground. That's mainly where he'll want to take this fight against Carl Pendred, but Carl Pendred is a very, very, very strong guy, and he's moving down from the middleweight division to his natural welterweight division where he was the champion in Cage Warriors. Carl Pendred, what can I say about the guy? He's a warrior. In Dublin, I thought he was done, dusted. He was nearly choked out. He nearly knocked out. Mike King didn't finish him off, and he made the comeback of all comebacks, one of the best comebacks you'll ever see. A guy that doesn't give up. He'll take the fight anywhere. He'll stand and bang. He'll take it to the ground. Ultimately, I think he would like to try and take this to the ground a little bit. I think he's got more chance of winning that if he stays heavy on Umalatov. It's a very close fight, this, but I think that Cathal Pendred's that SBG team at the minute is just on fire, and I think it's going to continue here with Cathal Pendred. So I'm going to go Cathal Pendred by unanimous decision. Next up, we've got Dennis Seaver against his third opponent already for this card. He was scheduled to face Rob Whiteford. Then it was Taylor Lapoulos. He got pulled today, and his replacement is Charles Rosa. Dennis Seaver, he's been in the UFC for a long time. He's coming off a no contest against Manny Gamburian. He should walk over Charles Rosa here. Charles Rosa is 9-0, fighting out American top team. He should really run over Charles Rosa here, and if he doesn't, something's really going on. So I'm going to go Dennis Seaver by knockout, first round. Next up, a really good fight, Nico Masuki, Masuki, I keep saying that, against Alexander Yakovlev. Yakovlev's a guy I've been watching outside the UFC, made his UFC debut I think back in May, against a very experienced UFC fighter, Damian Maia. Got taken to the ground. Maia was looking for submissions and surprisingly didn't pull one off. Yakovlev, he is very good in the ground, but I didn't think he was that good to stop the submissions of Damian Maia. He looks fairly limited in his feet, but he is a really good grappler, and if he gets you to the ground he will hurt you, and he can take you out down there. I beat Paul Daly before he came into the UFC, and that was mostly he took him down and he kept him there, because we know that Daly is very, very explosive on his feet. Masuki coming off a really good fight I thought against Kelvin Gastelum. I think he lost via unanimous decision, but I think he could have taken a round off of Gastelum, sorry. Good striking, very, very long, very, very rangy. He's decent everywhere. He's one of these guys that's coming out of Sweden. He's just really, really good everywhere, and I think he can win this fight here. If he catches Yakovlev in the right spot, he's going to put Yakovlev to sleep. But I can see this going to another decision, and Masuki getting a split decision. Next up, we've got Magnus Serenblad against Scott Askham. Scott Askham is a newcomer, fought in Bama over here in the UK, last beat Max Nunes, last time out to become the champion in Bellator, I believe. Watched the fight, can't really remember much about it. 12-0, fights out of Doncaster. Decent guy. I'm glad to see he's getting his UFC debut here, but he's got a tough guy in Magnus Serenblad. Both guys are very, very rangy. Askham, I think most of his wins are on his feet, whereas Serenblad is most of his wins come via submission. He's got very, very long range arms, and if he catches you in submissions, you're not going to put out. I think his last two wins are via guillotine. He beat Jotko back in Berlin, and I just feel like he's gonna catch Askham here once he gets him to the ground. I think Askham's gonna overcommit, and I think he's just gonna get caught and get taken to the ground. And I think that's where he'll show his weaknesses, and Serenblad will get the submission victory. So I'm going to go Magnus Serenblad by decision in the second round. On to the main card, we've got Nicholas Backstrom against Mike Wilkinson. Backstrom, last two fights have been phenomenal. Before he came into the UFC, he had a great knockout. You should go check that out. Just put in Nicholas Backstrom knockout and you will see, I think it was Max Koga, I think it was he was against, and it was like a kick to the face, like the Anderson Silva one, that he just went straight out. Fought Tom Niinamaki in Berlin, caught him like a bulldog submission, and took him out there, and he got a nice fight night, a performance of the night bonus. This guy, I reckon, will be, within 18 months, I think he'll be a top 10 featherweight in the UFC. I believe he will. Will he be a champion? not too sure yet. Maybe in the years to come. He is a very young guy. I think he's only like 20, 21 years old. I think he's going to absolutely... Mike Wilkinson's been talking a good game. I can't see him doing much here, to be honest with you. So I'm going to go Nicholas Backstrom by knockout in the first. Next up, we've got Ilir Latifi against Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz, newcomer at the UFC, but one of the kind of better light heavyweights outside the UFC with a 17-3 record. Fought mostly in his hometown or home country of Poland and KSW. Won his last 4 fights against ex-UFC veterans Goran Relic, Houston Alexander, Sokoju was in there, Mario Miranda. A guy who's very, very dominant when it gets to the ground. He's very top heavy. Tries to look for submissions, but he just likes to pound from the bottom. Most of his wins are via decision. But he's going to have a tough fight here. I think Blachowicz could be the underdog. My underdog, if you're going to throw money on somebody, I think it'll be him. But he is against a guy who's... I've seen his 3 fights, 3 of his 4 fights in the UFC, in Manchester and London and in Dublin. He won by submission against Diabate. He knocked out Dempsey last time in Dublin. He just looks very, very, very good, and he's ever improving. He's not a big guy. I think he's going to be, if he ever goes down to middleweight, he'll be very dangerous down there, because I think that's his natural weight. But in the 205 division, he's going to make he's making a lot of noise at the minute. So yeah, Latifi, good everywhere. Comes from a grappling background. I'm leaning towards Blachowicz in this. I don't know why, because I've seen in some of his fights he does look decent, but I think with the experience Latifi has, I think he is just going to nick it by a decision, so I'm going to go Latifi. Next up, we've got Akira Kurosani against Max Holloway. Huge fan of Max Holloway. Criminally, I think he's very, very underrated in the UFC. His only losses are to kind of top guys as well, so I think Bermudez is one of them, McGregor, Pori, so he's good guys that he's lost to. Very dynamic in his feet, he's finding his feet and he's knocking people out. Will Chope was one of them. He had a phenomenal fight against Clay Collard last time out. And I think he's going to catch Kurosani here, who's coming off a loss to Dustin Poirier himself. After he did hurt Poirier, in all fairness. So I'm going to go Max Holloway by knockout. I think I'm going to go 3rd round. In the main event, we've got Gunni Nelson against Rick Story. Now, Gunni Nelson, in Dublin, he got off to a slow start. I think he lost that first round against Zach Cummins. But if you watch that submission in Dublin, I've watched it many times since I come back from there. The way he opened up that submission was absolutely glorious to watch. It was really, really good. Took him down. He started to strike a little bit more in the second round, hit him, took him down, and then he started to open up with shots to the body, shots to the head, and eventually opened up and he caught the rear naked choke and took him out, and it was awesome to see. The crowd went nuts. He's against Rick Story here, who is very, very tough, but he's winning fights and then losing fights. I think at his last 9 fights he's lost 5 and won 4, and he's due a loss here, and I think it will happen. I think if this was over 3 rounds, Gunni Nelson maybe wouldn't finish him. Over 5, I can see him catching him late, so I'm going to go 4th round submission for Gunni Nelson. So that's UFC Stockholm out the way. I'm going to quickly go through UFC Fight Night 54, MacDonald versus Saffiedine, and some good fights on here as well, some newcomers coming in. So first up, we've got Pedro Munoz against Jared Sanders. Jared Sanders, I think he's dropping down 2 weight classes here. He's a very, very, very stocky guy, so he's maybe going to lose a lot of muscle mass with the drop down from lightweight to bantamweight. He's a wrestler, very, very good wrestler. Teaches wrestling, I think, for Oklahoma State, and that's when he's going to want to take this fight. But I think Pedro Munoz is going to eventually, the accumulation of his punches and kicks, it's going to show up. Matt Hober, he took him out in Brazil with a beautiful head kick followed up by punches to take him out. The former RFA champion, he is I thought he looked good against Rafael Assunção in his debut as well, so I'm going to go Pedro Munoz by knockout in the second. Next up, we've got Albert Tumanov against Matt Dwyer. Matt Dwyer fights out of Canada, 7-0, I think he is. All of his wins by knockout. Fights that I've seen against guys he should be beaten anyway. The guys have got horrible records, but he does have some nice jabs. He works, his footwork's really, really well. His angle's really good as well. He's got some pretty nice leg kicks as well. Tumanov's coming off a knockout as well last time out. I can't remember who it was. Let's see. Anthony Lapsley, back in May, my birthday, May 10th. Cannot remember one thing about that fight, so I'm not going to end too much it. He's got a little bit of grappling, very, very good in his feet, throws big hooks. I like Tumenov by knockout here. I think that quality opponent that Dwyer's never really faced before is going to come back. Tumenov is definitely a step above the two, or probably a couple of steps above who Dwyer's faced before, so I'm going to go Tumenov by the knockout in the second. Next up, we've got Jason Sago against Paul Fielder. The Irish Dragon, Paul Fielder, he trains with Donald Cerrone quite a lot, so his striking's very fluent. I watched him in CFFS over there. Became a champion over there. I think he's 8-0 with 7 of his wins by knockout. Sago is a submission guy who is really, he hasn't got much in his feet, so it's going to be a matter if he can get Fielder down to the ground here and hurt him. So it's your typical striker versus grappler. I've seen a lot of people go for Sago in this fight. I think Fielder can most definitely knock Sago out. 50-50 fight if you ask me, this one, but I'm going to go with Paul Fielder here, and I think he's going to win by knockout in the first. Next out, we've got Olivier Aubin-Mercier against Jake Lindsay. Lindsay, I think he lost last time to John Tuck via submission. 9-1. Seen him fight. Seen a few of his fights. Looks okay in his feet. Likes to clinch and kind of use range a little bit. Rushes in a little bit quick as well when he wants to throw shots, which Mercier is going to put him on his back straight away. That's going to be his kind of main weapon, is take him to the ground and look for a submission, and I fully expect him to do that. So I'm going to go Mercier by submission in the second, sorry. Next up, we've got Nordine Taleb against Li Jingliang. Liang, I think he's coming off a win, UFC 175, I believe it was. First fight of the night, first fight in the card. David Machode, 173, split decision. I remember that fight was pretty exciting to watch as well. But this is another step up here. He's against Nordine Taleb, who fought in the Ultimate Fighter Nations Canada versus Australia. He won in Quebec in April against Vic Gruich via a decision. This is going to be another fight that's fairly close. I think it'll go to decision. I think Taleb will just get the decision, but he does hit a lot harder than Jingliang, and I think he could get the knockout there, kind of maybe in the middle round, but I'm going to go by decision, so I'm going to go Taleb by decision. Next up is a really good fight on the prelims here. Darren Cruikshank against Anthony Njokuani. I don't think this fight's going to go to the ground, put it this way. I think this could be one of your favourite, if you're a fan of stand-up striking, these two are two of the guys that you really want to watch. Cruikshank and Njokuani, both really good Muay Thai practitioners, karate practitioners. Another 50-50 fight, I think. I think if anybody's to go to the ground, I think Cruikshank will take it there. He's shown improvements in that over his recent fights. A lovely knockout over Eric Koch. Lost to Jorge Masvidal last time out, who's a tough fight for anybody in that lightweight division. He's a grizzly veteran, so no shame in losing to Masvidal, who's probably a top 15 lightweight. Njokuani's coming off a loss to Vince Pichel, UFC 173. Before that, a win over Roger Bolin. I just like Darren Cruikshank, and I think he'll just take this via a very close decision, a split decision possibly. On to the main card, we've got Patrick Holohan. This fight's literally just been announced against Chris Sedelis. I'm going to go Paddy Holohan. Just probably the biggest star, probably at UFC Dublin, even probably ahead of Conor McGregor. Never heard a noise like it. At the weigh-ins, at the fights, he was the very first fight of the night, and he finished Josh Sample via a rear naked choke. And I like him to win by submission here, so I'm going to go first round submission over Sedelis. Bantamweight division, we've got Mitch Gagnon against Rob Font. Striker versus grappler. Gagnon's won his last 3 fights. Wins over Weil Watson, Dustin Kimura and Tim Gorman. If the fight goes to the ground, he's very dangerous down there, and he leaps on submissions really quickly. Rob Font's coming off a terrific knockout against George Roop, where he got a bonus out of that, I believe. I like Gagnon, but I'm going to go Rob Font. I think he's going to knock him out, and I think he might do it early. So I'm going to go Rob Font by knockout in the first. Sorry, second round. I'll go second round. Next up, we've got Elias Theodorou against Bruno Santos. Bruno Santos is just the complete spoiler. Chris Camozzi did it. I don't think he's going to have the chance to do it here against Theodorou. I think he's going to take him down eventually. I think he's going to wear him out in defeat and then take him down and then pound him out down there. He was the middleweight winner on Tough Nations. Fairly kind of a guy that he was actually screaming to his mum while he was kicking the shit out of his last opponent. So I'm going to go Theodorou by knockout. Maybe I'm going to go third round. They get a referee stoppage there. So yeah, we've got Charles Laprise against Yostenis Cedeno. Laprise was the welterweight winner on that show. Beat Mercier, dropping down to lightweight, I think, which is natural weight. And he's got a fairly easy fight here against Cedeno, who beat Gerard Sanders last time out. Charles Laprise, I think he can knock him out. I think he will. So I'm going to go Charles Laprise by knockout in the first. Co-main event, we've got Rafael Assunção against Brian Caraway. Pretty interesting fight. Brian Caraway lost to Takeya Misagaki in Japan. He probably should have won that fight. And if he didn't lose that fight, he was on a 5-fight win streak in the UFC with wins over Dustin Neese, Mitch Gagnon, Johnny Bedford and Eric Perez. Caraway hasn't got much in his feet. He's going to want to take this to the ground. But Assunção is a very good grappler and a very good submission practitioner himself. Very, very good defensive submissions from his back. I doubt he's going to get put in his back in this fight. So I'm going to go Assunção by decision. We should probably get that shot at TJ Dillashaw. He did beat him. I don't think he really did. But after Dominic Cruz's performance at the weekend, there's no way he's going to get a title shot anytime soon, I don't think. So I'm going to go Assunção by decision. And the main event, we've got Rory MacDonald against Tarec Saffiedine. Rory MacDonald, last performance, he looked absolutely phenomenal. He looked like the prospect that we've all seen for years when he fought Carlos Condit. He was beating his ass for a few rounds and then got caught and taken out. But he destroyed Tyron Woodley in that fight, took him down at will. He could have probably got the finish on him, I reckon. But he did look spectacular. Uses his range very well. He sticks to the game plan very, very well. I fully expect that TI is going to take the Saffiedine at the ground, because Saffiedine is very dangerous on his feet, and his accumulation of punches and kicks really take it out of you. Like Saffiedine's last opponent when he fought Hyung-Gu Lim, he hurt him in that fight, and Lim's the toughest motherfucker I think in the UFC after that fight. He was very, very tough. Saffiedine, I say, comes from Belgium, fights at Team Quest, great kickboxing skills, Muay Thai, leg kicks are vicious, so MacDonald's going to have to watch that lead leg of his. But I think Rory MacDonald's just the better fighter overall. He'll take this fight to the ground, and he could get a late submission in this fight, but I think he's going to win by unanimous decision. So I say that's my fight card picks for Stockholm and Halifax. Halifax card there. Next up is UFC 179 from Brazil. Jose Aldo against Chad Mini Mendes, as Conor McGregor calls him there. It's going to be interesting because McGregor's going over to Brazil for that. With Glover Teixeira, Phil Davis, the co-main event there. So I'll be back in a few weeks putting that one out. Come follow me on Twitter, BigBulba7MMA. I'm always there to talk MMA. Come follow me on there. Go follow Kingdom MMA as well. Some of the best guys, up and coming guys who follow all the MMA promotions all over the world. So go give them a follow as well. So take care. I will see you later, and I'm going to go win some more counter move money this weekend as well. So catch you later.